Hello folks, welcome to Explanation Core. Today we are going to look into a tale of a boy from the lone survivor of his household seeking vengeance, which unfolds against a backdrop of bloodshed and treachery. The story starts with two horse caravans in the middle of the forest as we get a look of our protagonist with mid to long black hairs and sword wrap in a cloth. We also see a blonde girl asking our protagonist about his age to know who is younger between them. Uninterested protagonists say he doesn't mind who is younger. Blonde girl giving a sign called the protagonist boring. With no expression, the protagonists say that she can be the younger sister. Blonde girls with enthusiasm says him and her are going to be family from now on. Hearing that, protagonist with a sudden expression started to remember about his real family. Then we get the information about our protagonist, whose name is Boris Jineman, who is the second son of Lord of the Travach's Longord. We get a flashback about 12 years ago in the Jineman residence. We see a lot of people gather in the hall and a person lying in the middle of the room with a white cloth all over her. We also get to see baby Boris in a hand of the maid. The Jineman family are the renowned martial household in the continent. Their family relic passes down through generations to the heir to inherit the mighty sword and shield called Wintry and Snowguard, which our protagonist is going to share with his older brother Yevgen Jineman. We get to know that their mother has passed away, but the young master is said to be kind and show affection to Boris. As the nation see, countless people died to the revolution each day, carrying by none other than Boris's own uncle, who was kicked out of the family, and now seek revenge to destroy the household to ground. Even if there is bloodbath in the family or the treasure is all looted, if there is one survival, he will take the revenge for all. Boris stood as the last survivor of his family, a lone sentinel against the darkness. He, fueled by grief and rage, vowed vengeance upon those who had torn his world. We see that the Boris is holding a sword which is shining brightly, assuming it's Wintry. The Jineman does not forget love, kindness, and also wrongdoing done upon them. As we hear that Boris must survive till the end of the painful world. We see adult Boris with his black hair trailing like a shadow, and a basement that led to the sword, and the shield gleamed with an otherworldly light, whispered promises of retribution. As we get into the story, we see a maid telling child Boris to stay away from Lake Emra, as it is visible form a state at night. They say there is an eerie glow emitted and is waiting to feed upon people. Boris and Yevgen laying in the garden under the tree discussing about the lake's mysteries. Boris' eye glimpse with a shine. Hearing that Yevgen will always be there to protect him, Boris feels happy, but also feels there is something out of place. A mix of happiness and unease get over him. After that, they both starting to spare with each other. Although Yevgen also instruct him to attack, they both were attacking and defending each other while having fun. From a window, a middle-aged man sees both the masters having fun. Sigh. Then we get to know that he is the head of the Jineman family. Lurkin Jineman, who is disappointed with their son's behavior, which is unfit for an heir. Suddenly we hear dogs barking loudly, getting the patrician attention. In the garden, we see that both the masters were continuing their sparring with, while Boris still having the odd feeling lingering. Their sword clash furiously, with Boris been too close to the sword trajectory and gets hit by the sword. Boris is laid down in his brother's arms. We hear from a distance a servant is calling the master for an urgent message. Then Boris realized with a scared expression that the odd feeling which he was having was related to this. Then a man with black cloak enters the room with the audience of the patrician. We see that the man is Vlado Jineman, brother of the patrician and uncle of Boris. As both the brother comes face to face, their tension-filled reunion held secrets and anger between them, taunting each other, with patrician asking what he is doing even after kicked out of the family, but Vlado responds with a wicked smile. The reason for his visit is mystery. Then, with a sarcastic tone, Vlado said that the only thing that has gone old in this room is Lurkin, as he insists patrician for a glass of wine, and with a sip of wine, they stated to remembering about their past, about the clashing of their sword and skipping training to play in the hills, then getting scolded by the father for not behaving like an older brother. With a grin expression, Lurkin asked the reason for his visit. Smirk Vlado discussed that the prince-elect Khan and he will become the chief elector this time, and once he becomes the chief, then Lurkin, who is on the other side, will become a thorn, and we will try to remove that thorn. Uninterested patrician moves his head, stating, "If you are going to talk nonsense, better be get out." With a scoff, Vlado remind him that it's not his mansion. With anger, patrician remind him about the death of their sister and his husband because of his vicious plan. Vlado denies the allegation with a serious expression. Then we see both are blaming each other and also see a beautiful blonde woman. With a shout, Vlado reminds that Lurkin was the one who killed them, throwing the cup for talking nonsense at Vlado way. The Treachery's household has already split into multiple factions. Will Boris and Yevgen will be any different from them? As both stood up, and Vlado give a final chance to his brother to forget the past, and with a sinister smile ask to hand over Winterbottom. Furiously, Lurkin unsheathes his sword and aims at his brother's neck, that he will never give him anything. Unfazed, Vlado walks out, giving warning that he will take everything. The patrician standing next to the window asks the butler to get ready. The time has come. Boris in Yevgen arms rushes back into mansion after hearing the message from the servant, as it indicates that the time has come to use. The Winterbottom. Boris looks at Yevgen with empathy. Then we get to know the history of the Winterbottom, as the armor snow guard has been taken from another country lord with army of over 9,000 soldiers, and the sword Winterer has killed numerous enemies from past 30 years. And both the treasure has been passed down by the Jineman household from generation. Only rumor is present about the Winterbottom, as no one has saw it, but now Yevgen is approached to hold the sword. We see the glowing aura emanating from the Winterer in the hand of Yevgen. Boris is in awe to see the Winterbottom. We get a flashback of a year where Lurkin was leading Yevgen into the basement, where the sword and shield of the Winterbottom kit was hidden. In the past, the Winterer and Snowguard was given to Lurkin and Valdo, hoping that their bond will get strong. But it was a mistake, because the true power of the Winterbottom kit is utilized when both are used together. As Yevgen is going to be 20 and he is the heir of the Jineman family, it's his duty to protect this relic. With sweat drips down from Yevgen's face as he hears Lurkin say that he should run away from the battle with the Winterbottom if he feels that there's no other option to survive and protect the family relic, and the family will survive from him. And to never to lose it, Boris hears all of this by peeking from the corner. Coming back to present, Yevgen shows the Winterbottom kit to Boris and let him choose the one he likes better. Boris, with a confusion, stated the armor is still heavy for him, so for now the sword is better for him. Yevgen approaches the sword and hands it over to Boris, and from now on, it belongs to him. Yevgen teaches Boris how to handle Winterer, and he will be able to receive it once he get old enough. The Winterer belongs to him from now on. Yevgen always tells that the Winterer is his sword only. The Winterer emitting light, and Boris thinks that the one who should be the master of Winterer should be Yevgen, not him. Yevgen explains to Boris that the rebellion has started by their uncle and they have to do as they have planned. Yevgen's determination to protect the family legacy. And with a worry look, Boris, remember that Butler once told him about the rebellion, and it only has a winner or a losers. The winning side does not get any punishment, while the losing side loses everything. And as the young master of the Jineman family, he should understand when the time comes. Yevgen holds the Winter to get ready for the battle. Ask Boris for his permission to borrow it. Boris, finally understanding the word to the butler, and said that Yevgen should be the one to whom the Winterer belongs, as he got received by the father, and he only hopes that he will always remember him if anything happened to him. Yevgen confronts again that the Winterer belonged to no other than Boris, and he will return it back to him when the battle ends. Hugging Boris and reminding him to be a strong warrior just like his name. Uproar outside. Then from the window we see people are marching. Both the young master are a little afraid. Man marching forward to the mansion, the patrician watching them from window, and then burst out from there and shout at the enemies that they dare to put a foot in his area and face the wrath now. Then we see that the butler, who is a mage, is casting some magic circle, and huge burst of light goes in the direction of our enemies. The moral of the soldier increase and the enemies gets decrease. Lurkin shout again for Vlado to come forward and face him head on. Then suddenly he hear loud noise coming from his side. Moving, he see a giant creature who has been summoned from the frozen realm, and his name is Krygol. Lurkin gets furious. Wonder who has summoned Kreigel here. In the crowd of the soldiers, he see Zhongnao, the archmage of Chief Elector Khan, and understand that he underestimated the enemy as the Kreigel continues to wreak destruction. People started to running wildly for evacuation. Lurkin saw that Boris and Yevgen are safe and takes Boris with him so that Yevgen can run away with the Winterbottom kit as they have planned, with the pressure from the patrician to follow the order. But he was worrying about Boris. He had no choice but to leave Boris behind and run. Lurkin hold Boris' hand, and they both run into the another direction. And as they were running, Boris was remembering the things he heard in the basement, and having a strange feeling once again that something is going to happen to Yevgen. As the Kreigel destruction and the army's battle continue, the mansion got destroyed in front of Boris. He was scared. On the other hand, Lurkin was full of anger and swearing Valdo for destroying of the Jineman family mansion, and he ordered the butler to check the status of the battle. Due to the loss of the mansion, their side was at the disadvantage. Understanding the situation, Lurkin came up with a plan to split the remaining soldier and attack from both sides. Hearing this, Boris interrupts, stating that with the monster present, it's going to be dangerous, but the monster can't touch any living of this world, and half of its body is in other world. Boris look at the monster with fear. They all crawl and goes near the mansion to attack. Lurkin order Boris that when the fight start, he need to fall back and run straight in the forest. Sweating running down from Boris' face, ask where to take shelter. With a pause, Lurkin mentioned Lake Emera. Hearing the name, Boris shiver in fear and hesitant to go there. With no other option, the patrician order him to run as fast as he can and go near the lake. There will be tree with a black trunk, and hide there. Due to the ominous humor, no one will come near there.
Lurkin commenced the attack as the soldiers rush forward. Lurkin shout to Boris to run away. Boris started running toward Lake Emera direction, hoping that all the rumor are just tales.
With Kreigel in the background, the soldier continues to attack each other. In the amidst of all this, Valdo, with an evil smile, enter the battlefield and starts to attack the soldier with his dark blade and continues to slaughter the soldier. With a soldier under his feet, asks the patrician to come forward and face him. His subordinate informed that Lurkin has attacked the other side. With a confidence, Valdo goes to confront his brother and to make his sword, the Dark Blade, the only sword to remain today. Lurkin got surrounded by the enemies, but with no surprise started to remove all his anger toward them one after the other. In the amid of chaos, Valdo backstab Lurkin, shock Lurkin to see a blade through his chest. He removes and stab him again through his gut, blood coming out from his mouth. Seeing his master in this condition, the butler rushes forward to help. Valdo was prepared for this, but suddenly a bright light flashes and mist appear everywhere as someone was forming a magic circle, who was none other than the butler, who was holding the injured Lurkin and ready to teleport. Valdo tries to attack, but failed. With a look of anger and disappointment, he ordered his subordinate to find them. Boris, on the other hand, continuously run to reach the Lake Emera, finally reaches there and seat near the tree. He was all alone in the forest. Then he heard a noise coming from back. While he was thinking about it, the noise suddenly got stopped and he feels something is approaching him. From the back, suddenly red whip like tentacles appears and catch Boris, as we see a monster of the lake has appeared to devour Boris. That insect-like monster pulls Boris closer to devour, and with his strong tentacles tries to kill Boris. As he pleads to someone for help, a bright shine ray of sword slashes through the monster and freed Boris from his grab. Boris, unable to understand the situation, is in horror. We see the shadow of the man who saved Boris. Pause, you guys guess who this person can be, and write it down in the comments section. The person was holding a sword and was coming closer to Boris. We see a worried Yevgen asking Boris, what is he doing here? Boris was confused, and before saying anything, Yevgen hugged him. Tear falls down through Boris' eye, and realizing that Yevgen should not be here, and as per the plan of patrician, he should be running away with the Winterbottom kit. Yevgen disagree with the patrician order for him. Treasure doesn't matters, but family does, and he is not going to leave them behind to die. Boris is his younger brother after all. A bright light flashes behind Boris, and both got alert about the sudden flash. Yevgen explained that uncle is not the only enemy, but Khan is also involved in this, as he is the one who has lent this much armed force and mages to uncle to overthrow the Travash's household. As they were discussing about it, a portal opens near them. Both got alerted, and from the portal Lurkin wounded, and the butler supporting him appears. They help the patrician to take rest and tries to do healing magic, but it was not working as the blade with which he was stabbed was having a strong poison. Butler didn't ask unnecessary question. When asked about the bright light, the butler told that on the enemy side they has a great mage and that their location has already been exposed by the spell of the mage. As they discussed the next plan, the patrician with a low voice indicated to go through the portal and save himself and the family treasure. Yevgen unable to decide. 5 men on the horses rushes towards them, and one of them was Valdo, who was furious with anger that those kids dare go near the Lake Emera, and this was the same lake which caused nightmare among people and is banned to go. Near there, and also the same lake, who took away his beloved sister. We again go in the past, where both Valdo and Lurkin were kids, and their sister Yenny was also there with them. The 3 of them used to play together, and both the brother loves their younger sister, especially Valdo, as she was the only person who saw him and Lurkin as an equal. Then we move forward to both the brother were arguing about Yenny marriage, since Valdo was against this as the family was from the enemy faction. Sensing no choice, Lurkin accepted it and wished her a happy life. But Valdo was not ready to accept that easily, so he lied to Yenny that her fiancé has went near the Lake Emera. Yenny, hearing that place name, she looked fear and run to save her fiancé life. Although it was Valdo planned to kidnap her in the middle of the forest only, so that way the marriage doesn't happen. But it doesn't go as per the plan. Yenny went near the lake. Her soul has taken away from her by the evil spirit of the lake. Guilty Vlado doesn't know what to do. Lurkin comes pushing Valdo with anger all over his face for Valdo. Scared, Valdo tries to explain him everything. That what has happened, he never planned for this for his younger sister. Angry Lurkin didn't care what he has to say. He has kicked Valdo out of the Travash's household, and he marched forward with a sword out of the hilt. Valdo shout from the corner to stop, but it was too late. Lurkin has already dealt the blow. Returning back to present, Valdo and his subordinate has reached at Lake Emera and stared searching for Lurkin. While they were searching, a monster attacked them. Valdo, present there, quickly dispatched the monster. While he was attacking the monster, the lake disgusting strong odor got his attention. Someone had ordered Valdo, if he destroys Lurin Jineman, then he will destroy all his nightmare. Yevgen still not able to decide to stay or run away with the treasure. The enemies were closer, and Yevgen, with a firm look, decided to stay and fight for his family. The family heirloom is not meant to protect it, but to use them to protect the family, and now it's the time. Yevgen looks boldly into the eyes of Lurkin. Boris stand there listening and remembers that he envy Yevgen and father, and he also know that to survive in this world he need their help. Yevgen console Boris that they all be together. All of them get ready for the battle. Boris, looking at Yevgen, realized that Yevgen's smile, which was always happy and caring, knew that this day will come. All of them went near the lake. Lurkin took a glimpse into the river, and remember his sister's soul is still trapped in here by the evil spirit. While he was remembering all this, Valdo comes with a mage behind him. They both draw their sword out to attack and confront that they both are late to acknowledge their wrongdoing. Lurkin charges forward with a scream. Valdo shielded with his sword, and the mages also started their magic casting. Valdo counterattack, and blaming Lurek that it's his fault and he was the one who had killed Yenny. The attacks continues, both with their full force attack each other. Yevgen was guarding Boris with the monsters and was murmuring to himself that when the red-eyed evil spirit appears, will he be able to protect Boris. Boris called him out, and as he looks at Yevgen, he just stood there in fear, his hand, which hold Wintry, were trembling. Boris thinks to himself that he will block the evil spirit once it appears. A bright light come from Yevgen's side. Boris was shocked. The snow guard was shining very brightly as a warning that it is here. Suddenly everybody disappeared. Only Boris was there in shock and called out for his brother. An ominous red fog started to envelop Boris as he looked back. With 2 horrific giant eyes there, he was the red-eye evil spirit. Boris wake up looking scared. He was in the middle of the forest. From afar we saw Yevgen coming with a bowl of water. Boris doesn't understand what is going on while Yevgen smiles. He rushes and hugs Yevgen tight tightly. Yevgen also hugs him. Boris still feels that something is weird, as a minute ago they were in a battle. Yevgen sees Boris is in confusion as he said, "Where is this place?" Yevgen pointed at the horse as they both ride here on his back while Boris was asleep. Patrician and the butler will soon contact them when the time come. While B patting Boris' head, both is in a disarray to what to do now. With Yevgen suggested to go to their relative, Boris wanted to live like a normal civilian in the meantime, since Patrician will contact them soon or later. His stomach growled, and they both went into a tavern. It's their first time there, so they were nervous and people were looking at them. Yevgen requested for a room, and people started to whisper about them. Boris was cautious about them as all of them started to look at him. One of the men brought the bowl full of bugs to Boris. He felt disgusted seeing that. As everyone was trying to bully the young masters, a man with brown hair stood up and came forward to have some fun and insisted him to try the delicacy of this inn. Yevgen was not having it, and the man still doesn't understand it. Yevgen holds the man's neck and pins him down on the table. Looking at this, Boris was shocked as Yevgen invites him to eat his so-called delicacy. With a spoonful of worm, he brings it closer to the man. Understanding the situation, he pleads not to do it, and apologies for it. Boris calls him out. Yevgen, getting a grasp of himself, and leaves the man neck. Throwing the spoon was going to his room. The man gets angry, looks at Yevgen, and all his comrades come forth to attack Yevgen. He knocked down one man by throwing the spoon. Yevgen was about to pull Wintry out, but stops from doing it as it is unnecessary to kill anyone. People, furious, all attack him at once while he was defending himself. On his side, he saw that they had caught Boris. Unwillingly, Yevgen also had to submit to them, and both were on their knees. The man with brown hair come forward with the same dish to feed to Boris. Boris, disgusted in fear, closes his mouth tightly as the bowl full of insect was in front of him. Yevgen shout to stay away from Boris as the man was pleased hearing him shouting and suggest to eat this on behalf of his brother. Yevgen, without a second thought, agree to that. The man with a wicked smile and others holding him down, they bring the spoon closer to him. With dullness in his eyes, he opened his mouth and took the bite. Everyone was disgusted that he actually ate the insect, including Boris. Yevgen started to stand up and introduce himself to everyone. The man was in fear hearing that as Yevgen requested a duel from him. Everybody was in whisper after knowing his identity, and we get to know that the man's name is Guy Cologne. Yevgen, before starting the duel, give him two options, either to get killed by his sword or to accept the defeat and eat the whole bowl of bugs. Boris eagerly looks at his brother as he never saw him in a duel with anyone. Geet was reading himself for the duel. He sees a bright light is coming from Yevgen's side. Seeing the sword, once he knew that it's not any normal sword, Yevgen ready with a stance. G rushed forward to strike first. Yevgen blocks it, and seeing that G was in fear, Yevgen swing his sword and cuts G's sword in two. G is in disbelief as Yevgen was ready to deliver his final blow. G had accepted his defeat and bow his head. They all gathered in the tavern, and the bowl was in front of GYT. Then he takes the first bite with a lot of struggle. He finishes the whole bowl. As he had learned his lesson, both the younger master went to their room. Boris was in the midst of his thought. Yevgen goes closer to him. Boris, with a serious face, said that it was his first time seeing him this way, which was necessary to do, but it was different from him. Then they both sit and talked about Boris realizing that brother is not going to be with him forever and he needs to take a stand for himself. Yevgen console Boris that he need to be strong and protect himself just like a clam. Boris understand that the reason he wants him to be like clam is because he himself is becoming like that. With that, Yevgen patted Boris' head and he went to bed, and Yevgen sit to guard for the night. Boris wake up in the middle of the night and see Yevgen is crying holding the sword. He stood up to comfort him, but he was unable to. He does not know what to say to comfort him. He lays back and tear drop from his eyes as well. Next day, both of them started their travel, Boris on the horse still thinking about last night. To lighten up the mood, he asked Yevgen about the flower, as whenever he asked him about them, he always gives story behind the flower, but this time it was different. He only named the flower. Dawn arrives and they plan to camp there for the night. With the warmth of the fire, Yevgen sensed people are around them and hold his sword. From the bushes, a group of men comes out, and their horse was cut loose, so they have no way to run. In the group of men, Yevgen noticed G is Aslo present and knew who brought them here and what are they here for. The bandit charges forward. Three men run toward Yevgen, he in his stance ready to block their attack. Push back a little. He throw all of them with a swing. A chain came from behind him. Too late to react, he was in the grab of the chain and locked in. As the bandit thought they have captured him, a bright light flashed from Yevgen, Wintry, emitting a strong aura, and broke the chains. Everyone was in shock, and they realized the true power of Wintry to freeze everything it touched. The boss of of the bandits sneaks behind and stands in front of Boris. Yevgen looks behind, worries for his brother. Boris, without a slightest fear, ready himself to face the leader. The leader swing his sword up high to attack him with a pleasant smile, but as soon as the axe is about to hit Boris, an arrow came straight and penetrate his neck. Everybody, including Yevgen, was in wonder to where it come from. Without sparing a sec, an arrow storm occurs and kills all the bandits. Yevgen hold Boris to protect him from any arrow. From the bushes, we see four mysterious hooded person coming out. Yevgen, guarding himself as one of the person, removed the hood, and they just wanted to help them and share the bonfire, nothing more. Yevgen, understanding their skill, allow them into the camp. Yevgen thanks them for their help, and they all settle down and they started to introduce themselves one after the another. The person in the red hair, her name is Janica Goth. Yevgen hesitate to introduce himself due to lack of trust. They all sit around the fire and the women throw an apple to Boris. He looks toward the women and does not eat it. The women praise and assure him that it's safe to eat. Janica tells they are coming from infamous Gallipoli, also known as Mortal Land. Gallipoli was an ancient magic kingdom and city full of gold everywhere, but due to war it's now the Great Wasteland. People go there alive and come back dead. While wandering around the place, they have founded a gold bracelet. Boris, curious, looks into the bracelet, in which images are engraved on them of dancing and a city full of gold. In the morning, they all went to the inns to get some rest. The inn's owner welcomed Janica. Also Boris and Yevgen followed them to the inns. Receiving the key, they all went to their rooms. Boris, also tired from the long journey, goes to room. Then we see a young Boris is playing in the garden alone. He heard someone is calling him. Valdo was calling him. He comes closer to Boris and pick him up. Boris, happy with his uncle company, was smiling. But on the other hand, Valdo, with an ill intention, he started to walk closer to the well. Scared Boris plead his uncle to let him go. Suddenly Boris opens his eyes. It was nothing more than a dream of his. But Boris realized that his hand are tied up. Also Yevgen is sitting in front of him all tied up, laughing on his foolish state, and that they have trusted them. Coming back to his senses in an anger, ready himself to pay them back. A loud noise comes from the inns. The owner has been thrown by Yevgen. He intimidated him to know the location of Janica and his gang. Owner, to save his life, told them the truth, that they have been sold to Lacortable Mercenary Corps, who are notorious for buying people as mercenary and make them work until their last breath, and they will soon comes to get them. Also, the Janaka's gang are in Helmer Tavern. Worried Boris looks at Yevgen, who is furious to hear all of this. They went to the tavern. Boris takes the cover outside, and Yevgen alone went in as per the plan. While walking inside, timid Yevgen feels sorry for Boris to have him experience all of this. He peeks through the door and sees two men of Janica gang is sitting there. With a plate and a knife, he went closer to them. Both of them were drunk and unable to realize that Yevgen is standing there. Yevgen, with a cold stare, look at them, afraid both of them got shocked. He smacked the plate into the face and stabbed the dagger into the hand simultaneously. Seeing the blood splash, both of them got afraid. After dealing with him, Yevgen asked to know where his sword is. Before listening the man attack Yevgen, he counter it with a slash and swing his sword and defeat him and bend them to their knee, giving him last warning to know where have they kept his sword. The other man told that Janica has it, and she had went to meet with Lacortable Mercenary Corps to strike a deal with them near the northern entrance of the village. The other guy run away to save his life, and Yevgen also free that man and gives warning to never show his face again. Both of them walk toward the northern entrance. Yevgen showed Boris the blooded knife, as this is what real world is like. You need to kill people to protect yourself. Boris had seen everything that had happened inside the Traven and was very scared. Innocent Boris questioned, is it okay to kill people? Yevgen, without hesitation, it is okay to do anything for your own sake, to protect, treasure, fight for oneself, and console to Boris to endure it. Two hooded figure was standing in front of them as they were hiding behind the roof. Boris point towards some people coming. They are the Lacortable Mercenary Corps, and a tall, bald man named Duraki is their commander. Janica greeted them, but the man is not happy as Yevgen and Boris run away, and now he wanted compensation from them. Janica does not agreeing because it's their fault to reach there late. Their argument continued. Janica and his subordinate finally agrees and return their coins to them, and they agree to work for them. Only on one mission as in compensation. Excited, Janica removed her hood, and Winterer was present there. Seeing this, Yevgen shout loudly to stop. He grabbed grabbed everyone's attention and jumped from the roof and ordered her to give his sword back. Angry Yevgen pointed his sword toward Janaka, and she teases them as they got fooled so easily. Boris angrily shouted her that she had exploited their trust. The leader of the corps, to judge fairly, ordered them to have duel, and whoever lose will become their slave. Yevgen and Janaka ready themselves for the duel. As she was about to draw Winterer out, she stopped, as she doesn't want to draw the attention of the corps to Winterer. So she decided to use a normal sword. The duel started, and Janaka had an upper hand in the clash. Yevgen felt a lot of damage and cuts on his body. During the duel, Boris noticed some presence from the tree nearby. Janaka stabbed Yevgen in his chest. He took that opportunity to close the gap and grab Winterer from her back and activated its ability. Within seconds, Janaka was frozen solid and unable to move, and the winner of the duel was decided. Looking at Janaka in that state, his subordinate tries to sneak attack them with an arrow, but before he could launch them, 3 daggers came straight and landed on his hand. The leader of the corps was disappointed to this dirty trick and called out Naya. From the tree, a young girl with white hair comes and attacks the man and defeat him. With the deal done, the leader captured Janaka and his subordinate and started to get going. Boris and Naya both exchange looks, and she leaves with her group. Boris in his sleeping, recollecting everything that had happened to them, then suddenly 2 hands come and try to choke Boris. He struggles and calls for his brother. With a push, his eyes open, unable to understand whether it was dream or real. He sees that Yevgen is sleeping there peacefully. He covers him with a blanket and sleeps close to him. Yevgen opened his eye, gasping for air suddenly. Next day, they went to exchange shop and showed a beautiful mirror cover in gems to the owner. After a careful inspection, he agreed to buy it 200 elso, which was too less for the mirror. They tried to bargain to increase the price, but stubborn man doesn't change his price. Boris was against the idea of selling this as it was their mother's last piece of memory. Without hearing anything, Yevgen agreed to the given price. With the money, they went to eat first, with Boris still thinking about the mirror and questioned to Yevgen where his father. Yevgen stopped and explained that Dad is taking some time to get ready and started to eat again. Boris understood that he is hiding something. Another night again, Boris had the same dream of someone choking him. Boris opened his eyes and he sees red eye, and he realized that the man is none other than Yevgen. He picks him up and throws him to the side. Yevgen was turning toward Winterer. Scared, Boris rushes toward Yevgen and holds him tightly and shouts to come back to his sense. Yevgen's eyes are fully red. Boris wake up from the nightmare and was gasping for air as he looked upward. Yevgen was standing in front of him, been normal. Seeing him, Boris compare the red-eye Yevgen and shiver run through his body. Scared to talk, Boris turn around and still feels the pain of choking and been thrown. Unable to explain the situation, he stay quiet. Next day, they again started their travel. Boris noticed that Yevgen is not in his best condition. Unable to grasp, Yevgen continued to walk. Boris stood there and thinks, where are they going from here? Sensing Boris is not coming, he turned around and asked him to walk fast. Boris asked father is not coming right. He grabbed Yevgen and tells him to tell the truth and to what had happened that day. Yevgen sits down and told father is not going to come. Then Boris started to remembers the details that he had reached near the Lake Emerald. Valdo had killed the butler and Lurkin with a sword in his chest. Also, the red-eye evil spirit had came out to devour him. With his giant body shadow cover over him, scared he was unable to move. A hand came from behind and pulls him at the back. It was Yevgen guarding him against the evil spirit. With Winter on his hand, he clashed with him. Head on, and bright light enveloped the whole area. Boris started to remember what his nanny had told him about the wrath of red-eye spirit. He run away as fast as he could in fear. Boris remembers everything, and both him and Yevgen was sitting near the bonfire. Boris' eyes widen as he hears that Yevgen has been cursed by the wrath of the evil spirit, and not much time has left for him before the cursed had occurred to Yeni. She was a very kind and loving person, but after she came back, she was a totally different person and was inhuman. And that's soon going to be the fate for Yevgen as he slowly started to go rash. Yevgen told Boris to hold the sword and makes him practice with the sword, emphasizing the sword is still heavy for him. Boris looks at Yevgen with tear in his eye and rushed toward him to give a hug. That he won't be able to survive alone, he needs him, and many people are after Winter. and they will come for his life as well, and he would like to be killed by his brother if he have to, rather than from some enemy. Hearing this, Yevgen slapped Boris. He, with tear in his eyes, is reminded to be strong and survive, never think of death again. Then he hugged him and comforted him that he will protect him as long as he could, but there would be a time when he needs to step out of the shade and to never trust anyone easily. He then picks and give Winterer to Boris to protect himself. As time passes, Yevgen started to lose his memories and often doesn't remember anything, and he is slowly turning into something else, and he is scared that he will harm Boris in any way during that state and afterward regret it. With this, he sits far from Boris and tries to not fall asleep, and it's been already 3 days without sleep. He stood up and give the snow guard to Boris, as he does not have any use of it now, and advise him to whatever happened, never seek revenge. Their family main reason to fall was for this same reason, as they divided in the family and seek revenge for each other. If only one side and forgive the other, nothing would have happened. So Boris should forget what had happened, and to start a fresh new life. Boris lower his head in disbelief. The night approaches. Boris is asleep, and Yevgen Aslo try to fall asleep, and in his dream he see that his mother and father is welcoming him, and Boris is sitting next to him. Yevgen open his eyes and sees a shooting star ascending through the sky. Looking at it, he finally figure out what he needs to do with a shine in his eye. Morning arrives. Boris wake up and see a pit is dug near him. Scared, he runs toward the pit and see Yevgen covered in blood with Winterer on his hand. With a strong heart, he wishes his brother to have a nice sleep, and they will meet one day. Till that day comes, he will always be in his heart. From now onward, Boris will walk on his own path, and what journey will he take and what all thing gonna await him is going to be interesting. So do subscribe and like on this video so that we would make more videos on this manhwa and many more.